We're beginning to see some successes. Let's keep at it.
International Women's Day. Good to finish on those two topics. Lovely to have you on the programme. Caroline Tarasi Moderani. I always mix it up. I don't know why I do that, Caroline. It's just force of habit. I do beg your pardon.
You were close enough.
I was close.
Rebecca Tarani.
There you go. Rebecca Hardy. Thank you very much indeed for your time. We'll see you tomorrow.
I'm Laura Trevelyan in Washington, and this is BBC World News America. Routine discrimination against black people by a US police department. After an investigation into the fatal shooting of Breonna Taylor, the US Attorney General finds a pattern of discrimination against black people by the police in Louisville, Kentucky.
LMPD uses excessive force, including unjustified neck restraints and the unreasonable use of police dogs and tasers.
The UN chief heads to Ukraine, trying to secure a crucial grain deal and avert a global food crisis. On International Women's Day, we look at how the working mothers who left their jobs during COVID are back and driving US economic growth.
I can see where this story is going.
And as Hollywood gets ready for the Oscars, how the Academy and the movie industry are trying to diversify. Welcome to World News America on PBS and around the globe. We begin tonight here in the US with important developments on policing. Since the death of George Floyd in 2020, the treatment of black Americans by the police has been in the spotlight. After a 2-year investigation into the fatal shooting of Breonna Taylor, the US Justice Department has found the Louisville, Kentucky Police Department engaged in routine discrimination against black Americans. Here's the US Attorney General, Merrick Garland. Separately, after Tyre Nichols died in January, 3 days after being beaten by the police in Memphis, Tennessee following a traffic stop, the Department of Justice will review the Memphis Police Department and look at training. Let's get more on all these developments now with our correspondent Neda Tawfiq, who joins us from New York. And Neda, let's start with the death of Breonna Taylor. The US Justice Department is finding examples of routine discrimination against black Americans by that police department there in Louisville, Kentucky. What more can you tell us? I'm so sorry about that. We're having some problems with Neda's audio. We'll try to bring her back if we possibly can. Well, let's turn to the war in Ukraine now. And the UN Secretary General was in Kyiv today, where he held talks with Ukraine's president, Volodymyr Zelensky, about extending a deal which allows Ukraine to export grain. The Black Sea Grain Initiative was agreed in July last year with Russia and Ukraine, brokered by the UN and Turkey. It allows ships to sail from southern Ukraine into the international waters of the Black Sea, crossing past the Bosphorus Strait in Istanbul, avoiding mined areas. The deal's up for renewal next week, and Russia has signalled it may not agree to extend it. Antonio Guterres says the agreement offers critical relief to people in developing countries. And that was James Landell in Kyiv. Meanwhile, Ukraine has denied any involvement in the attack last September on the Nord Stream pipelines built to carry Russian gas to Europe. This map shows where they won along the seabed from Russia across the Baltic to Germany. The damage was discovered near the Danish island of Bornholm. It's also relatively close to the Russian territory of Kaliningrad. The damage was first noticed when huge amounts of gas bubbled to the surface. This is what cameras recorded. Several experts said it appeared the pipes had been damaged by an exterior explosion. It's not yet been established who was responsible, but a report in the New York Times has now quoted anonymous US security officials as suggesting a pro-Ukrainian group was to blame for this. Well, let's go back now to Neda Tawfiq in New York and our top story, which is all about policing in the United States. Neda, you were telling us about what the US Attorney General has found in the case of Louisville, Kentucky, and systemic discrimination against Black Americans following that death of Breonna Taylor. Neda in New York, thanks so much for that update. Well, let's turn next to the former Soviet Republic of Georgia, where there were violent protests today against new laws which critics say will limit freedoms. The demonstrations were centred in the capital, Tbilisi, with police using water cannon and tear gas to disperse the crowds. This comes after the parliament backed a law which would force non-governmental organisations and independent media which receive any foreign funding to declare themselves as foreign agents. Our correspondent, Raihan Dimitri in Tbilisi, sent us this update. In other news now from around the world, police in Chile are searching for robbers who tried to steal more than $30 million in cash at an airport in the country's capital, Santiago. Nearly a dozen armed men ambushed workers on the runway as they were transferring cash into an armoured truck. A security officer and one of the alleged robbers were killed in the shootout. Elon Musk has apologised after calling a disabled employee who was laid off the worst. The employee had tweeted at Musk and asked if he was still employed after losing access to his work computer. The Twitter boss had tweeted that the man used his disability as an excuse to be unproductive. Well, today marks a very important day, International Women's Day. And across the world, women have taken to the streets to celebrate and to stand up for rights that are coming under attack in some places. In Pakistan, hundreds of women marched in Lahore and Islamabad to protest violence against women and girls and demand gender equality. In Spain, often seen as a benchmark for women's rights in Europe, several cities hosted competing marches, reflecting divisions on issues such as trans rights and the prohibition of prostitution. While a march in Istanbul, Turkey's largest city, ended in scuffles between riot police and protesters who tried to force their way through police barriers while the rest of the crowd dispersed. Women chanted, "We do not keep quiet, we are not scared, we do not bow down," in reference to a ban on the march by the city's governor earlier in the day. Well, here in the United States, we're going to use International Women's Day as a chance to reflect on how the pandemic years were especially tough on working mothers, many of whom dropped out of the workforce due to childcare issues. 12 million women in the US left the workforce during the pandemic, compared to 10 million men. But now women are coming back to the workplace, with 66% of all jobs in leisure and hospitality held by women. But still, figures show there are more men aged 25 to 54 in the labour force than women. Let's get more on all of this from a working mother of young children who is also the BBC's business correspondent, Samira Hussain. She's in New York City for us. And Samira, I'm a working mum, but of much older children. I know that you have young kids. I watched you struggle during the pandemic. You stayed in the workforce, but why did so many women drop out? Economy. Samira Hussain, working mum extraordinaire on International Women's Day. I salute you and all the others. Well, we turn now to online scamming and a swindle that uses the pretense of romance to extract money from victims. It's called pig butchering. As the name suggests, the scammers refer to their victims as pigs. They start with small amounts and then fatten them up or con them out of as much money as possible. A BBC World Service investigation has spoken to former scammers. A warning that this report from Zhao Yingfeng contains scenes that some viewers may find disturbing. Now, Hollywood is getting ready for Oscar night this Sunday, and with the glitz and the glamour come real questions about the Academy's efforts on diversity. Research shows that over the event's 95-year history, only 16% of the winners have been women and only 2% have been women of colour. Our Los Angeles correspondent Sophie Long now reports. And as we have been reporting, it is International Women's Day, and to mark the occasion, there's a brand new Barbie doll. Space scientist Dr. Maggie Adarin-Pocock. The Barbie doll has a somewhat controversial record when it comes to stereotyping women. But Adarin-Pocock was very happy with the results of her doll. Let's hear what she has to say. A happy scientist. And before we go tonight, have a look at this fantastic display from a flock of starlings in Yorkshire in northern England. An estimated 250,000 birds have made the Ripon wetlands their home this winter. drawing crowds of birdwatchers and filmmakers who gather nightly to watch the flocking birds. I'm Laura Trevelyan. Thanks for watching BBC World News America.
Hello there. We've got mild air across southern Europe, cold air in the north, and between the two,